Imagine you are a college student majoring in history. You just pulled an all-nighter for your Global War on Terrorism class on a paper looking at what types of guns are used by terrorist groups. Later that morning, you find out you got a C on your Modern European History project. You email your best friend, "I could just kill that professor. I deserve a better grade than that." Later that day, there is a knock on your door in your dorm room. It is the campus police and security. You have been flagged as a threat for being a potential school shooter based on online activities. Your school is using safety monitoring systems powered by AI that looks at emails, it looks at web searches, it looks at social media posts, and it creates red flag alerts for students who could be having a mental health crisis. You try to explain to the campus police, "Look, I was looking at guns for a classroom assignment. I was just kidding when I said I wanted to kill the professor." But nevertheless, you are escorted to the campus police station for further questioning. Word spreads quickly. The students who saw you coming out of your dorm room with the police decide to retell the story on social media. After hours of questioning at the police station, they decide it's a false alert, and you are released back to your dorm room. But in this age of social media, the damage has been done. 1,000 things start going through your head. What does this mean for my on-campus interview next week for that dream internship? What about sorority rush? Does that mean I'm not going to get a bid to a house? And most importantly, when you apply to grad school or to your first job, is this red flag alert to be a potential school shooter, is that going to follow you? Social media is very interesting, but these safety monitoring platforms, powered by artificial intelligence, these are something that we have been seeing targeting schools K through 12, and now some colleges are starting to use them. This concept of having monitoring of students by third-party technology companies is an evolving field, especially post-pandemic. After almost 2 years of online and hybrid learning, the majority of students in grade school, middle school, high school have school-issued devices that have embedded monitoring software. But now some colleges are starting to look at should they require students to download monitoring software onto their personal computers so they can access the university network. These technology companies have a wide range of products, and they're all based on scanning these online activities. So they can tell, is that middle school student playing Roblox during Spanish? Or is that high school student during algebra? Are they checking out the latest shoes? They can also offer web filtering, so you can make sure a student doesn't access inappropriate content. And that helps the school stay compliant with the Children's Internet Protection Act. But now with the power of artificial intelligence, you can take all these online activities and you can create red flags to see if a student is having a crisis such as self-harm, cyberbullying, or is it potential violence? So as a physician with an MBA, I've always had one foot in the clinical world and one foot in the business world. But recently I threw my hat into the ring, joining the Cordell Institute for Policy in Medicine and Law here at Washington University. We are tasked to devise solutions for those ethical and legal questions around patient privacy, such as with artificial intelligence. How does that impact personal healthcare data? When the educational world collides with the AI technologies, and now you have medicine coming in with mental health, I see many issues, both intended and unintended, that must be addressed. When you start to unravel, how did we get all these monitoring softwares into the educational world? We have to focus on COVID-19. So when you look at the number of studies, it really does point to the pandemic as a major cause of students struggling with mental illness. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, 69% of public schools have reported an increase in the number of students seeking mental health services at schools. So in response, the schools have tried to introduce support service teams and increase the breadth of services offered to students. But despite the best intentions of these schools and the support staffs, both public and private schools, they need help. A report in 2019 from the American Civil Liberties Union found that there are students, millions of them across this country, that attend schools that have no school counselors, no nurses, no psychologists, or no social workers. And when that student support staff is present, often they are assigned hundreds of students, and they don't have the resources to be able to identify and assist a student who is struggling. In colleges, they're having the same issues. So safety monitoring platforms, powered by artificial intelligence, they have become the solution in the box. They are that answer that educators are looking for with the skyrocketing number of students suffering from mental health issues in our strained school systems. So on initial inspection, the box, it is beautifully wrapped, has a lovely bow. When you open it up, it offers unprecedented visibility into a student's mental health and well-being using an eloquent technology solution. There's many companies out there that are selling these products. The top companies, Bark, Securely, GoGuardian, and Gaggle, have engaged over 50,000 schools K through 12 across this country. And the numbers are rising. The sales forces for these companies, they tell educators, you can make your school safe because we can tell you who's at risk for self-harm, for cyberbullying, and potential violence. Now, this really sounds great, especially to an educator with limited staff, but we need to step back. How accurate are these systems? So, a report by the Future of Privacy Forum stated that these self-harm and violence monitoring systems are an unproven technique for effectively identifying and assisting students flagged. So now we have all these technology companies that are selling the solution in the box, and we're not even sure it's the solution. There's also other questions we have to ask. For example, where do the schools store these mental health alerts, both true and false? Who has access to these red flag alerts? How long are they retained in the educational record? And will this alert, most importantly, be included in the student's educational record when they apply to college, graduate school, or they go for their first job? When you start to talk about student privacy, you are bound to run into the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA. FERPA is a federal law, and it is about the protection of the student educational record. Any school that receives federal funding from the U.S. Department of Education, they actually have to comply with FERPA. But keep in mind, not all schools receive federal funds, so they don't have to comply, and students are not protected under FERPA. There are also questions as well on how these monitoring softwares might violate the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, because if you have a student with their school-issued laptop at home at night doing their homework, that might constitute an unreasonable search and seizure. So as you can see, we have a lot of unintended consequences that come when you use these type of monitoring softwares in the schools. So for example, we might have our vulnerable student be even further harmed if there's not strong guardrails and privacy policies in place. For example, the student could be unfairly targeted by educators or fellow students due to the bias around mental health. Law enforcement, social services could needlessly get involved, or the student could face potential disciplinary actions. There's also that chilling effect that Big Brother is watching your school-issued device. And students might be hesitant to use their laptop for learning because they're concerned that someone is monitoring and storing their data. And they may be right. We do know these tech companies have been storing some of this data in their databases, subject to school policies and the contract terms. But we do know that one company, Securely, is the subject of a class action lawsuit because they were found to be selling data that they collected in the educational setting, and they sold it to third parties without the parents' and the students' knowledge. So our current situation is a triangle of intersecting bodies. We have tech companies who have this wonderful solution in a box that they are selling to educators. Educators are trying to do the right thing, and they're implementing these products. But they're doing it without students and parents knowing the full extent of their use. So as a consequence, our students could lose their rights to keep their personal data private. So thinking back to our opening scenario, our solution in a box can now become Pandora's box. Now, I am not saying that we shouldn't use artificial intelligence in the educational setting. But for a solution to work, we need an interdisciplinary team in place, from the education, from the medical, from the legal, and from the technology worlds. That interdisciplinary lens is so important because artificial intelligence, it is going to require it. So all you aspiring teachers and doctors and lawyers and engineers out here in the audience, I encourage you, take classes outside of your given course of study. Challenge yourself, branch out. Now, you may not be an expert in this unrelated field, but when the time comes and you're sitting at the table making decisions about future technologies, you are going to be able to contribute in a much more meaningful and positive way. And that's how we get real and tangible changes. So let's go back to our original scenario. What would it look like if this interdisciplinary team was in place? Our student, well, she searched the web for guns, and she wrote in an email, "Kill the professor." But this time, instead of a knock on the door by the campus police, it is a call from a trained crisis counselor. She reviews the whole incident and decides it is a false alert. And better yet, our interdisciplinary team, they review the incident and they learn from it. No social media, no threats to higher education or to employment, no more Pandora's box. Instead, the algorithm gets modified and it becomes the solution and the gift that the original developers dreamed it could be. Thank you.